Marcus spent 2 hours in his quarters preparing. He disabled his room's surveillance system using administrator backdoors he'd helped design years ago. Then began crafting a message to Earth. The transmission would be delayed, encrypted and routed through multiple relays to hide its origin, but it would reach human authorities within 72 hours. Whatever happened to him, Earth would know the truth about the Zeltharian Trade Council and their business operations. The message included everything: detailed schematics of the facility, recordings he'd made during his tour, biometric data on the imprisoned species, and most importantly, evidence that humans were being studied as potential future livestock. He also included his recommendations: immediate suspension of all trade negotiations, deployment of rescue operations, and a comprehensive investigation into which other alien governments knew about or participated in these activities. When he finished the message, Marcus looked at himself in the mirror. He'd been a diplomat his entire career, trained to find peaceful solutions and build bridges between species. Tonight, he would have to become something else, something his grandfather would have recognized from the old war stories. At 0300 station time, when the facility operated with minimal staff, Marcus made his move. The journey to level 7 took 12 minutes. Navigating service corridors and maintenance shafts he'd memorized during his tour. He carried a small toolkit from his diplomatic supplies and a portable datapad loaded with software he'd designed back when he thought he'd spend his life as a programmer. The control center had only one technician on duty during the night shift, a young Zeltharian who was more interested in whatever he was watching on his personal screen than monitoring the facility. Marcus slipped into the room like a shadow, moving with the silent precision his father had taught him during childhood. Camping trips in Earth's wilderness, the technician never heard him coming. One quick application of a sleeper hold, another skill, inherited from his military family, and the guard was unconscious but breathing. Marcus zip-tied him to his chair and gagged him, then turned his attention to the computer systems. Breaking into the system took 18 minutes. The Zeltharians had layered their security on top of the human-designed operating system, but they hadn't understood the underlying architecture well enough to close all the vulnerabilities. Marcus had administrator access within minutes, and from there, he could control everything. His first action was to disable all communication systems. No alerts would reach the upper levels, no emergency signals would summon reinforcements. The facility was effectively isolated from the rest of the station. His second action was more complex. He began downloading everything: personnel files, financial records, customer lists, operational procedures, and most damning of all, correspondence with other alien governments. The scope of the operation was larger than he'd imagined. This wasn't just one rogue facility. It was part of a network spanning dozens of star systems, with customers and suppliers throughout this region of space. While the download ran, Marcus moved to the most crucial part of his plan. The lock controls for the containment areas were surprisingly simple, designed for efficiency rather than security, since the Zeltharians never imagined their livestock would have outside help. Marcus began systematically opening cages, starting with the areas housing the youngest prisoners. The first section he reached was where Lyra and her people were held. The little blue girl was awake, pressed against the bars of her cage when Marcus appeared out of the shadows. Her eyes went wide with recognition and hope. "I told you I'd help you get home," Marcus whispered as he opened her cage door. Lyra stumbled out, her legs weak from months of confinement, and immediately hugged Marcus around his waist. "I knew you were different," she said through tears. "I knew humans were good." Marcus knelt down to her eye level. "Listen carefully, Lyra. I'm going to open all the cages, but you need to help me. Can you talk to the others? Tell them to stay quiet and follow my instructions?" Lyra nodded eagerly and began speaking in her native language to the other Catherians. As Marcus opened cage after cage, she translated his instructions. Soon, dozens of blue-skinned beings were free, helping to open cages for other species and spreading the word through the facility. The alien children and Marcus couldn't think of them any other way. Regardless of species, showed remarkable discipline. Despite months or years of imprisonment, Despite the trauma they'd endured, they followed his directions with quiet determination. They helped free the older prisoners, shared what little strength they had with those who were too weak to walk, and organized themselves into groups by species and physical condition. What struck Marcus most was their immediate trust in him. These beings had every reason to mistrust any adult, especially one from a species they'd never encountered before. But somehow they seemed to understand that he was different, that he represented something their captors had forgotten, the simple moral principle that intelligent life had value beyond its usefulness to others. The liberation took 47 minutes. When Marcus returned to the control center, 347 beings of 17 different species were free and organized in the main corridor of Level 7. The unconscious technician was beginning to stir, so Marcus prepared a mild sedative from the facility's medical supplies to keep him quiet for a few more hours. The download had finished. Marcus now had complete records of the entire network names, locations, financial transactions, government contracts, everything. He uploaded the data to multiple secure servers on Earth and throughout human space, ensuring that even if he didn't survive the next few hours, the truth would eventually reach those who could act on it. But Marcus wasn't planning to die quietly. He had one more surprise for the Zeltharians, using the facility's own communication system. He began broadcasting on all frequencies, not just to the space station, but to every ship and facility within 50 light years. The message was simple and devastating: complete documentation of the Zeltharian operation, including customer lists, financial records, and detailed evidence of systematic murder of sentient beings. Then he activated the facility's emergency systems with a twist. Instead of locking down to contain a crisis, he reversed the protocols. Every door on the space station opened. Every alarm sounded. Every communication channel carried his broadcast. And the station's own systems began transmitting his evidence, packaged to every connected network in the region. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. Through the facility's security cameras, Marcus watched upper levels of the station erupt into panic as the truth spread. Some alien customers tried to flee. Others attempted to destroy evidence. A few species, including some he'd never heard of, began expressing outrage at the Zeltharians, apparently having been unaware of the true nature of the facility. But Marcus's greatest satisfaction came from watching the restaurant level. The diners who had been casually consuming sentient beings just hours earlier now faced a flood of their former victims. The freed prisoners hadn't come seeking revenge, they'd come seeking answers, justice, and most importantly, others of their kind who might still be imprisoned elsewhere. On the station, Lyra appeared at his shoulder as he monitored the chaos above. "What happens now?" she asked. Marcus looked down at her. This small being who had maintained hope and trust despite experiencing the worst that intelligent life could offer. "Now we make sure this never happens again anywhere else." "How?" Marcus smiled grimly. "By making sure everyone in the galaxy knows what happened here. By showing them that some beings consider all intelligent life to be precious, not just their own species. By proving that some people will fight for strangers simply because it's the right thing to do." The first human ships began arriving 6 hours later. Earth's rapid response fleets, already in the region for the trade negotiations, had received Marcus's original message through quantum relay and moved to investigate. What they found was a space station in complete chaos and one human diplomat holding 17 different species of freed prisoners in a protective cordon. The aftermath took months to sort out. The Zeltharian Trade Council was dissolved. Their government fell within weeks as evidence of their operations spread throughout their territory. Other species that had been unknowingly supporting the network, like the silver-skinned beings from the restaurant, found themselves facing diplomatic isolation and economic sanctions from the growing coalition of outraged civilizations. But the most important outcome was simpler and more profound. The rescued beings were returned to their homeworlds, their freedom secured by a new interspecies alliance dedicated to protecting the rights of all intelligent life. Treaties were signed, laws were passed, and enforcement agencies were established to prevent similar atrocities. Lyra's people, the Catherians, became humanity's closest allies in the region. Their natural empathic abilities, combined with human determination and moral conviction, created a partnership that transformed local politics. Other species began to see cooperation and compassion as strengths rather than weaknesses. Marcus returned to Earth a hero, but he never quite saw himself that way. When reporters asked him why he'd risked everything to save aliens he'd never met before, his answer was always the same: they were people in. Marcus forced his breathing to steady. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to fight, to do something, anything but charge blindly into a situation he didn't understand. Instead, he drew upon years of diplomatic training and 3 generations of his family's military service. His grandfather had liberated prison camps in World War II. His father had been a peacekeeping officer in the asteroid colonies. Now it was his turn to face evil, but he had to be smart about it. He picked up his knife and fork, hands trembling slightly, and looked down at the plate. The silver-skinned alien watched with obvious interest. The Zeltharian waiter hovered nearby, eager for approval. Marcus cut a small piece of the meat and brought it toward his mouth, stopping just short of his lips. "Fascinating," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "The preparation is unique. Tell me about the process. I'm always interested in learning about local customs." The waiter's forearms moved in delight. "Oh, honored guest, you have such refined taste. The process is quite sophisticated. We maintain optimal stress levels in the specimens to ensure proper adrenaline distribution throughout the muscle tissue. The harvest is timed precisely to maintain peak freshness. This particular specimen was selected for its youth. The meat is more tender, and the emotional responses are more pure." Marcus nodded thoughtfully, still holding the fork near his mouth. "And you said you have other species available? A wide variety?" "Oh, yes, honored guest. We serve 17 different sentient species. Each has its own unique flavor profile. The Catherian children have a sweet, delicate taste. The Romalian elders provide a richer, more complex flavor. And we have recently acquired some magnificent specimens from the Outer Rim territories that show remarkable intelligence levels." The silver-skinned alien leaned closer. "I highly recommend the Catherian younglings," it said with a voice like grinding metal. "Their empathic abilities mean they experience fear more intensely than most species. The resulting chemical changes in the meat are exquisite." Marcus fought down the urge to vomit. Instead, he carefully set down his fork and knife. "You know—" "What? I'm actually quite full from the negotiations today. Perhaps I could get a tour of your facilities instead? As a trade negotiator, I'm always interested in learning about efficient operations. It might help with future business arrangements." The waiter's eyes practically glowed with excitement. "What a wonderful idea. We are very proud of our operation. It is the finest in this sector of the galaxy. The Trade Council would be honored to show Earth's representative how we maintain such high standards." Marcus stood up, leaving the plate untouched. "Excellent. Lead the way." As they walked through the restaurant, Marcus memorized every detail. The layout of the dining area, the number of staff, the locations of exits and service corridors. He counted roughly 30 diners of various species, most of them consuming meals that his mind refused to fully process. The kitchen was worse than he had imagined. Through reinforced transparent barriers, he could see the preparation areas where Zeltharian chefs worked with methodical efficiency. What struck him most was how normal they made it all seem. They wore standard food service clothing, used conventional cooking equipment, followed health and safety protocols. They had turned mass murder into a mundane business operation. "As you can see," the waiter explained proudly, "we maintain the highest standards of cleanliness and efficiency. Each specimen is processed according to strict guidelines to ensure optimal quality and safety." Marcus nodded, taking mental notes of security cameras, guard positions, and what looked like computer terminals controlling various systems. "Very impressive. And the holding facilities?" "Ah, yes, level 7. We maintain separate environments tailored to each species' specific needs. Optimal temperature, humidity, lighting, even psychological conditioning to ensure the specimens remain healthy and flavorful. The elevator ride to level 7 felt like descending into hell. Marcus kept his expression neutral while his mind raced through possibilities. He was one human on a station with thousands of aliens, most of whom apparently considered intelligent beings to be food. He had no weapons, no allies, no backup, but he also had something they didn't expect, a moral code that refused to allow this to continue. Level 7 was laid out like a warehouse, with rows upon rows of cages and pens extending into the distance. The smell hit him first: fear, desperation, and industrial cleaning solutions fighting a losing battle against organic waste. The sounds were worse. Soft crying, whispered conversations in languages he didn't recognize, and occasionally a scream that was quickly muffled. "Here we house the smaller species," the waiter explained, gesturing toward a section filled with cages barely large enough for their occupants to stand. "The Cytherians are particularly sensitive to overcrowding, so we provide just enough space to maintain their mental stability. Too much comfort reduces the stress hormones that enhance flavor." Marcus saw dozens of blue-skinned beings similar to the one he'd glimpsed on the cart. Some were clearly children, huddled together in family groups. Others were older, their large eyes holding a despair that spoke of understanding exactly what their fate would be. When they saw the humans approaching with the Zeltharian guide, some pressed themselves against the back walls of their cages while others reached through the bars, making soft pleading sounds. One of the children, a small girl with bright blue skin and silver hair, looked directly at Marcus. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old by human standards. Her large eyes held intelligence and awareness, and when she spoke, her words were in perfect standard. "Please," she whispered, "help us." The waiter noticed the exchange and chuckled. "They learn standard quite quickly. It makes the harvesting process more efficient when they can understand instructions. This particular specimen has been here for several months. Prime quality, young enough to be tender, old enough to fully comprehend what's happening. The fear enhancement is optimal." Marcus knelt down beside the cage, pretending to examine the child more closely. Up close, he could see the intelligence. In her eyes, the way she tracked his movements, the hope that flickered when he didn't immediately turn away. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Lyra," she replied, her voice barely audible. "I'm from Cytheria. They took us from our school. Are you going to help us get home?" The simple question hit Marcus harder than any of the horrors he'd witnessed so far. This child still believed in rescue, still trusted that someone might show mercy. The weight of that trust nearly broke his carefully maintained composure. "The emotional responses are quite sophisticated," the waiter noted approvingly. "Notice how quickly it formed an attachment to you. This is typical behavior for this species. They seem programmed to seek emotional connections even in hopeless situations. It makes them fascinating subjects for study." Marcus stood slowly, his mind made up he'd seen enough. Whatever plan he came up with, whatever risks he had to take, he could not walk away from this place knowing it would continue. These beings weren't animals or food, they were children, families, individuals with hopes and fears and dreams. They deserved better than becoming dinner for monsters who had forgotten what compassion meant. "This is indeed an impressive operation," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the rage building inside him. "I think Earth would be very interested in learning more about your methods." The waiter's excitement was obvious. "Wonderful! The Trade Council will be so pleased. We have been hoping to expand our operations to include Earth specimens. Your species shows such promise, the emotional range, the intelligence levels, the way you form social bonds. We believe Earth humans would provide exceptional dining experiences." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. They weren't just running a horrific operation, they were planning to expand it to his homeworld. Somewhere in their databases were probably detailed studies of human psychology, physiology, and behavior. They had been preparing to turn Earth into a hunting ground. "I'd like to review your operational procedures," Marcus said. "Perhaps we could discuss the technical aspects of your business, computer systems, security protocols, that sort of thing. For my report back to Earth, Of course. We use the latest in automated systems. Very efficient, very reliable. Let me show you our control center. As they walked past more cages filled with suffering beings, Marcus began to form a plan. It was dangerous, probably suicidal, and would almost certainly end his diplomatic career. But it was also the right thing to do, and that was enough. The control center was located on the same level, a small room filled with monitors and computer terminals. Marcus counted 3 Zeltharian technicians managing the systems that controlled life support, security, feeding schedules, and what he realized with horror was a harvest calendar showing which beings were scheduled for slaughter on which days. Tomorrow's list included Lara. Quite sophisticated, Marcus observed, studying the layout. Fully automated, I assume? Minimal staff required? Exactly. We've streamlined the entire operation. These 3 technicians can manage the entire facility during normal operations. We pride ourselves on efficiency, Marcus nodded thoughtfully. And the security systems? For such valuable inventory, I imagine you have comprehensive protections in place. Oh yes, multiple redundancies. Automated lock. Marcus Chun had been traveling the galaxy for 3 years as a trade negotiator, but the Zeltharian space station still made his stomach turn. Not because of the artificial gravity or the strange blue lighting that seemed to pulse with every heartbeat. It was the smell. Something sweet and metallic that clung to the recycled air like a bad memory. The meeting with the Zeltharian Trade Council had gone better than expected. They were willing to open new shipping routes through their territory, which would cut Earth's transport costs by 30%. Marcus should have been celebrating, but something felt wrong. The way the council members kept glancing at each other during negotiations. The nervous laughter when he asked about their food production facilities. Now, he sat in the station's most expensive restaurant, the Golden Nebula, trying to decompress. The Zeltharian waiter approached with 4 arms moving in what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of a smile. Its skin was a deep purple, almost black in the dim lighting, and its large yellow eyes reflected the light from the table's holographic menu. Welcome, honored guests from Earth, the waiter said in heavily accented standard. What brings you pleasure this evening? Marcus scrolled through the holographic menu, looking for something familiar. Most of the items were unpronounceable, their descriptions vague. Then he saw it, prime Terran-style protein, prepared fresh. The description mentioned it was prepared in the style humans preferred. I'll take the Terran-style protein, Marcus said. And make it rare, please. I like my steaks with some pink in the middle. The waiter's eyes seemed to brighten, all 4 arms moving in what Marcus now recognized as excitement. Excellent choice, honored guest. Very rare, very fresh. The freshest we have available. You will not be disappointed. Something in the waiter's tone made Marcus uncomfortable, but he nodded anyway. That sounds perfect. As the waiter glided away, Marcus noticed other patrons watching him. A group of Zeltharians at a corner table whispered among themselves, occasionally pointing in his direction. Another species he didn't recognize, tall, thin beings with silver skin, seemed to be having an intense conversation while staring at him. The restaurant's atmosphere grew stranger as minutes passed. Soft music played overhead, but it was interrupted by occasional sounds from the kitchen. Not the usual clatter of pots and pans, but something else. Voices, high-pitched voices that almost sounded like crying. Marcus tried to shake off his unease. He'd been in space too long, probably just homesick. Earth felt like a distant memory now, with its blue skies and real sunlight. Here, everything was artificial, controlled, sterile. Maybe that's why his nerves were on edge. A commotion near the kitchen doors caught his attention. Several Zeltharian staff members were wheeling something through the dining area. It looked like a large serving cart covered with a white cloth, but the shape underneath seemed wrong somehow. Too angular. Too tall for any normal food preparation. The cart moved past his table, and for just a moment, the cloth slipped. Marcus caught a glimpse of what was underneath and felt his blood turn to ice. It wasn't food equipment. It was a cage. And inside the cage, pressed against the bars, was a small blue hand. The hand belonged to someone that looked remarkably human except for the blue skin and slightly larger eyes. The creature inside the cage couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall, with features that suggested youth, innocence. It was looking directly at Marcus through the bars, and its expression was one of pure terror. Marcus felt his world tilt. The sounds from the kitchen weren't equipment malfunction or food preparation. They were screams. The freshest we have available comment from the waiter suddenly took on a horrifying new meaning. He stood up so quickly his chair fell backward, the crash echoing through the restaurant. Every conversation stopped. Every eye in the place turned to look at him. The Zeltharian waiter who had taken his order was approaching with a covered plate, steam rising from beneath the silver dome. "Your order, honored guest," the waiter announced proudly. "Prime Terran-style protein. Prepared exactly as you requested. Very rare, very fresh. We selected the youngest, most tender specimen we had available." The waiter set the plate down with ceremony, lifting the dome with a flourish. Marcus stared down at what was unmistakably meat, red and barely cooked, arranged artfully on the plate. But it wasn't beef or any other Earth animal. The texture was wrong. The color was wrong. And there, unmistakably carved into the flesh, were what looked like small fingers. Marcus stumbled backward, his hand flying to his mouth. The entire restaurant was watching him now, waiting for his reaction. Some of the alien patrons were leaning forward with interest, as if his response was part of the evening's entertainment. "Is something wrong, honored guest?" the waiter asked, tilting its head with what seemed like genuine confusion. "We prepared it exactly as humans prefer. We have been studying your species' dietary preferences very carefully. This is considered a delicacy here, sentient protein, served fresh. We thought you would appreciate our attention to detail." The room began to spin. Marcus gripped the edge of the table to keep from falling. Around the restaurant, he could see other plates being served to alien customers. Similar arrangements of meat, some still moving slightly. The soft crying sounds from the kitchen continued, occasionally interrupted by what sounded like a scream cut short. "Where ... Marcus's voice came out as a whisper. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Where did this meat come from?" The waiter's 4 arms moved in what Marcus now realized was pride. "From the breeding facility on level 7, honored guest. We maintain a very clean operation. All specimens are kept in optimal conditions until harvest. This particular specimen was selected this morning specifically for your order. We wanted to ensure maximum freshness for such a distinguished guest from Earth." Marcus looked around the restaurant again, seeing it with new eyes. The other customers weren't just dining, they were participating in something monstrous. The blue-skinned beings he'd glimpsed weren't just similar to humans. They were clearly sentient, clearly intelligent. And they were being farmed like cattle. The beings you're serving," Marcus managed to say. "They're intelligent, aren't they? They can think, feel?" The waiter's yellow eyes blinked slowly. "Of course, honored guest. That is what makes them such a delicacy. The fear adds flavor to the meat. The intelligence makes the experience more ... refined. We assume that Earth humans, being such sophisticated creatures themselves, would appreciate the subtlety." Marcus's hand went to his stomach as nausea washed over him. The trade negotiations, the nervousness of the council members, the way they'd kept looking at him during the meetings, they thought he knew. They thought he was complicit. They thought humans were customers for this horror. A new voice spoke from behind him, gravelly and amused. "First time seeing the menu, human?" Marcus turned to see one of the silver-skinned aliens approaching. It was tall and thin, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to hold ancient cruelty. "My people have been dining here for centuries," the creature continued. "The Zeltharians run an excellent operation. Very efficient. Very clean. And the variety is impressive. They have specimens from dozens of species. Though I must say I'm curious to try Earth human someday. I've heard the emotional range of your species makes for particularly flavorful meat." The creature's words hit Marcus like a physical blow. They weren't just serving other species here. They were considering humans as future menu items. The trade negotiations, the shipping routes, The cultural exchange programs, it was all preparation for something much darker. Marcus looked back at the plate in front of him, then at the kitchen doors where the soft sounds of suffering continued. Somewhere in this station, in cages and pens, were dozens or maybe hundreds of sentient beings waiting to be slaughtered for the entertainment of creatures who had forgotten what mercy meant. The waiter was still standing beside him, waiting expectantly. "Shall I have the chef prepare your order differently, honored guest? Perhaps you prefer it more cooked? Less cooked? We are here to serve." Marcus realized that everyone in the restaurant was still watching him. This was a test. He understood now. His reaction would determine not just his own fate, but potentially the fate of his entire species. If he showed weakness, if he revealed his horror, he would confirm that humans were prey rather than predators. But if he played along, if he pretended to accept this nightmare, he would be complicit in the ongoing suffering of countless innocent beings. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. In the kitchen, another soft cry echoed through the air, quickly silenced. On his plate, the meal grew cold. Around him, alien eyes watched and waited to see what humanity was truly made of.